If you've ever seen this video of mine on how I make art in Clip Studio Paint, please disregard it. I don't make art like that anymore. And Clip Studio has a lot more features now. So I'll show my updated process, and if you're a beginner, don't worry, I'll be sure to explain all of Clip Studio's features that I use. But if you'd like a more in-depth explanation on just the UI, I have a video on that. Just click the pop-up link up here. Thank you so much to Clip Studio Paint for sponsoring this video. I've been using Clip Studio for years and this is the best art app, period. I'm never leaving it. If you've never used it, go ahead and download the free trial right now. There's a link in the description. There's all versions for Windows, Mac, iPad, Android, etc. So just go download it and then come back to this video. Once you've tried it out and you really like it, I highly recommend actually buying and getting this app. Personally, in my experience, I think this is the best app for illustrations. I will be drawing on this iPad. This is the iPad Pro 12.9-inch 6th generation. Recently just got this since my old iPad just fell apart. That was also a mini. It was really small. If you're following along on PC, don't worry, the UI is completely the same. So it doesn't matter which operating system, you can follow along just fine. I do have to mention, if you're using an iPad, get yourself a Bluetooth keyboard, like a cheap one will do. This will make your life a lot easier. This is the same keyboard I've been using since that last video. Also get one of these silicone pencil holder things. This will just, give you a better grip and more comfort. One last thing is that I'm currently using the Pro version of Clip Studio Paint. This is the cheaper option because I only use it with illustrations. Okay, so let's get into the app. Opening up Clip Studio for the first time, it might look something like this. But before starting the illustration, we gotta set up our workspace first. So all of these, Clip Studio has a lot of panels, and some of them just aren't necessary. They're really good, like, you can use these for a lot of things, but to me it's a little bit too much, it's a little overwhelming as well, especially for beginners. So we're gonna set up our workspace first. So I'm just gonna drag out all of these panels, and I'll tell you which ones that I use and which ones that I just delete. So just click and hold on the name and then drag them out. Okay, except for the one on the right here. I'll get into that in a bit. First up, the tool. This is where we select our tool. I don't know why it looks like this. On every art program, it's always on the left right here. Make it thin. Next up, color wheel, of course. Layers, I leave it at the right and I make sure it has all of this space because I use so many layers. I use like 100 layers. Subview, I'll tell you what this does. I use that. Animation, nope. Auto action, yes. Information, no. Color mixing, no. Color slider, no. Oh, navigator, yes. Let me put it right here. Quick access, no. Search layer, no. Layer property, yes. I'll put it down here. Item bank, color set. I don't use this anymore. Auto action goes right next to layer property. Oh, this is supposed to be separated. The subview and navigator goes together. History goes right next here. Subtool goes to the bottom right here. And brush size, you could have this or not, just to quickly select brush sizes. For me, it's unnecessary because you can actually just hold Option Command or Alt Control, hold two of those buttons together, and then click and drag on your screen, and then you'll see that you can adjust the brush size to the size that you want. So I'll delete this as well, and tool property goes down here. So this one on the side right here is separated into 3 sections. Okay, so this is my usual workspace. Sometimes I would hide this panel right here just with the double arrows. So first up I got color wheel. Because color wheel, it's easy to just select the colors right here rather than double clicking the square at the bottom, selecting and hitting OK. The square on top is the foreground, the one on the bottom is the background. Some brushes utilize both colors at the same time, something like this. So the top one is yellow, the bottom is blue. And if I go back to the foreground, you can see that this brush, well, you can't really see it, uses both of the colors at once. This applies to just some brushes. Next is a subtool. So within each tool, there is a subtool and a category. So like the pen, you can see by the name up here, it has different categories. The edge category is the one that I made myself. Pencil, even stuff like lasso, has its own category. And in each category there are the brushes, and in the brushes you can adjust the settings with the tool property. So this panel right here is to adjust the size, opacity, other things like that. The right, as I said, the layers, because I use so many layers. And lastly, this one, which is the materials. If your material isn't there, you can just go to Window and Material. You can pick just any one of them because they all just open up to just one big panel right here. So like no matter what I click, it'll just be the exact same panel. There's no reason for that. You can just see all of those categories right here. These are Clip Studio Paint's assets. It comes with the program, you can freely just use this. I'll get more into it as I explain my illustration process. And I almost forgot this panel right here. So this is the navigator. I can just zoom in, zoom out with this. I can rotate. I can reset the rotation, reset the size, zoom in 100%. I can even flip it around. And for the one next to it is Subview. This is where I store all my references for my original characters, or whatever that I'm currently working on. So think of it as like a tiny flip book. I can flip and go through the images of my characters, or whatever reference that I want to store in here. Or even like a photo. This is my bedroom. I can even color pick directly from the image as well. So it's super useful. So on the bottom is layer property. I only use this one right here, which is the border effect. Click on it and whatever you draw will have a border. You can adjust the thickness and adjust its color. But going through this sometimes is a little bit tedious for me. You can just select a color from the wheel and then hit the paint bucket. Or select something here and paint bucket again. Paint bucket. Easy, easy. Next to it is auto actions that I use a bunch. I'll show the ones that I use in the art process. And lastly, history, in case I just want to go back to the beginning. One last thing I want to get into before I actually start the art, which is downloading assets. This is important because Clip Studio is known for its huge library of assets. A lot are free and you can just download them and install them. So to download assets, just go to asset.clip-studio.com. I'll put a link in the description. And you can just download any brush that you want. Let's say I want something that's a flower brush. And I can sort by new or popular. Let's go to popular. And I'll grab this rose bush. Hit download and make sure that you're logged into Clip Studio. Clip Studio is its own separate thing. It'll have its own app for PC and Mac. For iPad, you can just access it right here at the Clip Studio icon and go to Open Clip Studio. This will open up. Click here to see your downloads. It's finished. I can close this, go back to Paint. And if I want to install anything that I've downloaded, you have to make sure that you put it where you know where it's gonna be. For example, if I'm in the pen category, I can just put that rose brush that I downloaded right into it. But that wouldn't really make sense, right? If I wanted to look for it, I would have to put it somewhere where I know where it would be. So I can go to the decorative section right here and go into Flora. Hit this down button, which is for downloads, and these are the two that I just downloaded. Add to palette, and there it is. If you want to make your own category, so let's see, I have this background section. I can just drag and drop. Wait until you see the red line right here, and then drop, and then there it is. You can right click it, group settings, and rename it. And then you can just drag and drop, move your brushes around, and arrange your own category for your brushes. Okay, so we got the workspace, we understand the panels, we understand how to install our brushes. Now let's get into drawing. You can open up a new file right here, or just go to File, New. And I usually go at A4, 300 dpi for the highest resolution, in case I want to use it as a print. You can also change the paper color, which is the single layer that comes with the file. I usually go with a soft gray, so when I create this new file, it doesn't really blind me. Okay, so see, right here, there's the paper layer, and there's the blank layer. You can't draw on the paper layer, it's just the background. You can double click it and then change its color though, but that's all it can do. It comes with a blank layer, this one you can draw on. And whenever you draw, there will be an asterisk right there. This means it hasn't been saved yet, so let's go ahead and save it right now. I'll call this witch because I want to draw a witch. Saving, saved. Okay, so if I do anything else, that asterisk pops up again. I can Control S, save, or I can just draw, and then hit this button right here. Alright, let's get into sketching. So this is the brush that I use. You can actually just go to the asset site and grab what you want. You can use Clip Studio's default brushes, but if you want to use the exact brush that I use, this is called the 6 Pencil Soft. So originally when you download it, this is what's going to look like. It's very solid. I used to use this for lining, and then later on I felt like this would be a good sketching brush. But the issue right now is that it's super solid and I want it to be a little bit more softer. So what I do is create a duplicate. You can just duplicate with this button right here, and it's made a copy. So what I need is the brush's density to adjust along with my pen pressure. So the lighter I am on the screen, it should be a little softer, and the harder it should be, you know, completely solid. And in order to do that, you have to adjust the settings at the opacity or density. Either of these will work. You can see that there's a box right next to it. Usually I adjust at the brush density. So hit that and then turn on pen pressure. You can see in the preview window, the start and the end of the stroke looks a lot softer. That's because it is adjusting with the pen pressure. Now let's try it out. So here it is with my hand very softly and going harder and back softly. And you can see it's a lot softer now. So this would be the brush that I use for sketching. Now I'm just gonna come up with a few rough ideas. So I decided I wanted to go with this sketch right here. I could either sketch over it and figure out the anatomy and the whole sketch by myself, or I could use 3D poses. I use 3D in drawing quite a lot because it's very useful, so I'll just hide this for now. And if you open up new materials, you'll see that there's a 3D section right here. You can expand it, and let's go over here to body type. And here are the body type figures that you can use. You can either drag and drop, or just hit this button right here. Posing is a little bit difficult, so what you can do is 1. Go to the asset store, download a pose. It'll appear in this download folder right here, and then you can just drag and drop onto your model. Clip Studio also has their own poses. In the pose folder right here, you can expand for hand poses or the entire body. So again, just drag and drop. For hand poses, you can also drag and drop. But if you want to change just one hand, just make sure you select one hand and then drag and drop. Click on the figure once and all these balls will appear. You can just click and drag to pose each limb, or you can adjust with these sliders right here. But if you want to adjust each limb yourself, you can just select each body part, it'll highlight in red, and then slowly adjust that. Okay, now let's take a look at the tool property for a second. There's a lot of settings that you can play with, but here are just the ones that I use. The first one is height. I could change the figure's height. I could change the head to body ratio. Next is pose. There's a check mark right here. If you can't find any of these settings, you can just go to the wrench right here. Like that checkbox for pose, it'll be in pose. I would sometimes take this off. What that does is it takes off the joint restriction. As you can see, I can't move her chest up anymore because realistically, human bodies can't bend back that much unless you bend over here. If I want to exaggerate the pose a little bit, I can just untick that and then pose as much as I want. Turning this off will make posing a lot easier. Lastly is the light source right here. So if I turn the camera around, and let's say if I wanted to reference the figure's back, you can see it's really dark because there's shadows. I can just click and drag on this ball, change the lighting, so now I can see everything a lot easier. Alright, so that's just the necessary basics for you to understand how to use the 3D figure. And now I'm gonna pose this character to fit the sketch that I made. Okay, now I think I can just figure out the rest of the pose without looking at the sketch. So I'll just delete the sketch with this trash icon right here. And I'll also use Clip Studio's hand poses for these hands. Okay, now the posing is complete. I'm gonna adjust her height a bit. I'm not gonna bother with the right leg because I'm probably gonna crop it right around here just to avoid drawing the other leg. Also, if you switch to another tool and you can't get back into posing the figure, the tool for it is the object tool right here. Okay, I'm pretty satisfied with this. I'm just going to rasterize it now to prevent myself from accidentally reposing it. So what I do is going to right click onto the layer and then hit rasterize. What this does is turn it into an image. So I can draw on the layer. I can also erase it. So basically it's turned into an image. I'm going to lower the opacity right here and then sketch on top. I do want to make it clear that tracing over 3D models is not wrong. You can use it, it's a tool, it's right there for us to use. It'll make our lives so much easier, so just use it. So when tracing over, you don't have to go exactly following the model. What I do is just grab the proportions, and I'll also adjust her anatomy to fit my own art style. Now that I've grabbed just the basics, I can just delete my 3D layer right now because I've just got the basic pose. And now I will adjust this to my liking. I'll go to the lasso tool right here. So I'm going to make her torso a little bit shorter, and I can either just move with the move tool right here, but sometimes I will transform. So with this button right here. And then hit OK. Even though the anatomy is quite correct by using the 3D figure, I still think that it still needs adjustment to make it fit with my own art style. I can do more adjustments with the Liquify tool. Mine is set right next to the blend tool if you can't find it. So just select the first one and adjust the strength and hardness to be a little bit lower. And with this, you can just shift around your drawing without having to erase and redraw over. Gonna make a few more adjustments. Okay, now I think this is looking pretty good. Now when I do a sketch over, what I do is go to the edit, tonal correction, and hue saturation, and I make this a lot brighter. So it looks like it's transparent, but actually it's just light gray. So now I can just sketch on top of this. If I make any mistakes and I want to erase, I can just hit the C button, and that will switch whatever color I'm using to the transparency. So the sketch brush has now turned into an eraser. And don't forget about the Liquify tool that you have, just to make quick adjustments. Maybe like a high-waisted skirt. And I want to give her patterned socks. I think that's cute. How about some ruffles at the edge of the skirt? This is just messily drawn, just enough that future me will understand to add this later. You know what, I'll add a bag, a crossbody bag as well. And it's heart-shaped. Okay, so next up is the hair. I still use the same method from the last video, which is to create a border effect and adjust that to the sketch. So make a new layer, go to your layer property and turn on the border effect. So now when I sketch, it has a border, but I want to make this look like a solid object with a black line art, so I'm going to apply black to the edges and use white. Now I'm not going to use the sketching brush because it's too transparent. I'll delete that. Go back to my pens, and in the G pen, this is the solid round brush. I think this would be better to simulate the hair, but since it's so round, I'm going to try and make this more flat. So go to the wrench icon and head over to brush tip. Let's turn on thickness and angle. So the thickness is obviously the thickness. If I turn this low or high, it's completely flat now. It's completely straight up. I need to twist this around a bit. So you can see it twisting in the preview window right there. Okay, let's see if this works. Let's shrink this down a bit and then change the border effect. Okay, so it looks more natural, and when I try this out, it looks a bit more like hair. I'll move this layer down by clicking and dragging the 3 lines down here, put it below so now I can see the sketch on top, and let's try that again. I'll flip the canvas and do the same for this side. A little bit hard to make out what's what, so let's just sketch over this. We're gonna turn this into an image, so just like with the 3D pose, let's right click and rasterize. So you can see in the layer property, the border effect is gone. So once I draw on this, let's test it out with white, there's no border effect anymore. I only want the lines and I don't want the white part, so I'm going to delete the white part easily by just going to Edit, Convert Brightness to Opacity. What this does is turn anything that is a bright color to just transparent. So that was completely white, now it's completely gone. I'm just going to merge these 2 layers together because I like my sketch to be on just one layer. So either I can just use this button and this will transfer whatever that was on the top layer down below. But if you don't want to go through that, you can just hit the one right beside it instead. And I think this looks pretty good. Now what people would usually do is go straight to lining, but usually what I would do is add color. So adding color would make everything look more legible. So currently it's just a sketch. What your brain actually sees is something like this. Even though you think your sketch is good, it's better to add just some blocks of color just to check what everything looks like. So I'll make a new layer right beneath it and just slap down some colors. I'll just use that hard round G pen that I used earlier. Oh, I don't like the flat effect, so I'm going to revert it back to its default state and add some colors. Oh right, you can see that there's gray lines because I adjusted the colors to be gray. I'll just have to change the layer style to multiply. But now those gray lines are a lot more visible. I can make it less visible by making it brighter. Go to Edit, Tonal Correction, and level correction. So it's the brightest color. That means I would use the one on the right here. So that light gray is now less visible. Anything bright on a multiply layer would be less visible. Now let's continue coloring. Now the last color that I'm gonna put down is her hair color. I actually want to use something that's kind of an ashy-ish blonde kind of color, but it's hard to see with this background, so I'm just gonna change the paper layer to white. I'm just going to merge the sketch in with the color. So now that they're one thing, I can liquefy both of these. Shift the hair up. Well, let's just make her fit the canvas. I'll transform just by hitting this button up right here and enlargen. If you want to change the canvas shape, just go to Edit, Change Canvas Size, and then you can just click and drag from these points around. I'll crop this leg off. Yeah, okay, this is really nice. This is good. I know I said I wouldn't do any more adjustments, but I'm just so nitpicky. Now the next step is to line it, but before that we gotta change the image's resolution. So in the navigator, hit this circle with the square, and this will zoom in 100%. This is the canvas's actual size. If you zoom any more, it'll break up into pixels. So currently it's at 600, and if I go back to 100%, this is the closest that I can zoom in with. So I'll lower the opacity and make a new layer, and I'll show you what happens when I start to line. I use textured brushes for lining just because that's what I'm comfortable with, but the downside of that is when lining, sometimes these would become a lot more pixelated if the canvas isn't big enough. Okay, now if I zoom in, you can see it's quite pixelated because there's not enough pixels for the texture. The easy way to fix this is just to increase your image resolution. So just go to Edit, Change Image Resolution. And right now it's at about 2,000 pixels. I'll try and increase this to 3,000. Hit OK, and make sure I'm zoomed in at 100%. Let's try that again. It's a bit sharper, but not sharp enough. I'll try at 4,000. Oh, no, we're really close up. And it seems to be a lot more sharper. This is the brush that I use for lining. It's called Raz's Roughy Sketchy Set. And the one that I use is the rough nib, just this one right here. Now you can actually just go in and start lining, but for me, I turn up the stabilization a bit. Stabilization will make your lines a lot smoother. This is what it looks like with no stabilization on and stabilization on at like 32. You can see that my strokes are going slower, but also a lot smoother. So this would help if you have shaky hands. If your brush doesn't have it, just go to the wrench icon, go to correction, and turn on stabilization right here. And I'm just gonna speed up this process because I don't have any special techniques for lining. So before I continue, I just want to do the ruffles here. This is Clip Studio's Simple Frill brush. It is two-toned like what I showed you earlier. So you can just see from the preview, I want it to be white and the lines to be black. Okay, this may be too detailed for my liking. I'm just gonna go download one. I found this frill brush called Handwriting Lace Brush, and it seemed to really fit with my art style, so I'm gonna use this one. So I made a new layer, and I'm just gonna go in with this brush. And also the one on her skirt. Now I'll just hide the sketch and fix this up. Now the lines are done, time to add some color. Turn on the sketch layer and then shrink it all the way like this, so I can just eyedrop the colors from the sketch. Make a new layer, make sure it's beneath your lines, and then let's go to the paint bucket tool. The only settings that you need for paint bucket is close gap and refer multiple. So what reference does, you just turn it on and select the first icon. If I fill, it just fills up the entire layer. But with refer multiple turned on, it'll acknowledge everything that's on other layers. So even though the lines aren't on this layer, it'll acknowledge that there are lines right there. So I can just fill like this. But let's say I wanted to fill this part right here, but not here. There's a tiny gap right there. You can just turn on close gap and adjust the density as much as you want. I'll turn it on high, and you can see that it only filled this area right here. colors filled, complete. Now you can obviously see that there's a lot of gaps and little places where the color isn't there. What some people do is actually go in with a round brush and then fill in the gaps themselves, but you don't have to do that with Clip Studio. There is a button for that. So if I hide my line layer, you can see all the gaps right there. We're gonna fill in these gaps, but first we're gonna make sure the gaps are filled within the character itself and not actually bleeding out going outwards like this. So in order to do that, let's just go back to our lines, and with the wand tool, we gotta select the outside of the character. But the problem with that is it only selects right at the edge, and this will make the color bleed out. You have to make the selection right in the center of the line. So make sure you have area scaling turned on and try out like 4. The number should depend on your lines, how thick it is. Still a little bit of bleed, but I think number 4 is a good amount. Now we gotta select all the parts that isn't the character. Okay, now the outside is selected. We're gonna invert this by just hitting the 3rd button right here. Or you can just go to Select, Invert Selected Area. Now the dotted lines aren't on the outside anymore. Now we're gonna make sure that this selection is permanent. Let's go back to our color and then hit Mask. When a mask is created, it's automatically selected to the mask. You have to click on your canvas to go back to actually drawing on it and not editing the mask. So let me show you. Once I do this, it's not getting outside of the character because I've already made a mask right here. Make sure your color is selected, go to Filter, Correction, and adjust line width. Switch this to Thicken and then select High. And all the colors are filled in, all the gaps are filled in. Let's compare from before and after. To be honest, this is so cute. It's like lineless art. And I'll turn on my lines and we'll see that I missed out a selection and some colors may have bled. I haven't done the whites of the eyes or the mouth yet, so I have to go in and fix that up. Colors are done, move on to shading. Just make a new layer on top of your color but below your lines and click this button right here so it clips onto anything that's on the layer below. If I were to draw, it wouldn't go outside of the character. Change the layer style to multiply, and I'll just use a medium gray for this. I'll just use that same line art brush for the shading. Right, now this is done. I do it very simply, and I don't leave my shadows gray because it's too dull. So I'm going to be changing the colors. Just go to this checkerboard button right here, click it, and this means it will lock transparency. What that means, it'll lock whatever that's on that layer. We can see if I take that out, if I take everything out, and you see the shadows, I have lock transparency on. If I draw, it'll only apply to what's already on the layer. Now I'm just gonna turn this to a really weird, softish, purplish blue kind of color. I can just hit the paint bucket up here to apply the color to the whole layer, and I'm gonna gradient each part with orange. And I just used the airbrush. Pick like a bright peachy color. Now compared to that gray that I started with, this looks so much more colorful. Now let's get into auto actions. This is one of the auto actions that I use, and what this does is add a border to the shadows. So if I click this play button right here, it'll run through a process and there'll be this line around the shadows. This is just a small effect that I really like, and maybe it's unnecessary for your art process, but I really like it. So if you want to use this, hit this download button after you've downloaded it, select the auto action, add to palette, and there'll be 2 of them. They're both in Japanese though, but the first one you can just click on it and then hit play, make sure your shadows are selected, and eventually this will pop up. But if you want to adjust the width of the border, you can just go with the second one. You hit play and it'll go through the process but pause right at the shrink selected area. You can change this number. Let's see if I just go with 1 and hit OK. Now the border is so much thicker. When you hit undo though, you'll have to undo the entire process that it went through. In auto actions, it's not applying an effect, it's actually going through the motions of doing something. As you can see here, it's going through all these steps that you could manually do, but instead of having to do that lengthy process on your own, you can just record the buttons that you click and then pack it up into this thing. So you only just have to hit a button and it saves you a lot of time. Now because I use a textured brush, you can see that there's dots because it bordered around these tiny dots from the texture. What I'm gonna do is just lock the transparency again, go to my blend and then select blur. And I'm just going to blur out any parts that I don't want the border at. Usually I don't do just one layer of shadows, I do another one. So I'm going to make another layer, clip that, set to multiply, and do a second set of shading. I'll make another layer and set this just to normal, leave it at normal, and then go select this part, the underside of the hat. Lining, color, shading, that's complete. Next is to change the line art's color. How I do that is with an auto action. And with this auto action, you actually have to have all the colors merged into one single layer. So just select all your shading and all your color, right click, create folder, and insert layer. And then make a duplicate. This is because this duplicate is going to be merged into one single layer. Right click that folder, merge selected layers. It is now just one single layer. Now when changing line art color, you could either just go to your line art, lock transparency, and then select the color, slowly go in and then change each color yourself, just manually changing the line's colors, or do what I do, which is grabbing that merged layer, go to your auto actions, install the auto line color, and then press play, and it'll go through this process and it'll create this really weird colored layer. What you do with this layer is just move it up on top of your lines. Now you can see that the line colors have changed, that are more colorful. There are still a few issues, wrong colors or colors being sort of mishmashed. You still have to go in and change those colors. So you could either change it on this color, but I usually just merge it and then just change everything on a single layer. Like for the face, I would like the color at the eyes to be darker, around the mouth to be more red, so on and so forth. So I still gotta make a few minor adjustments. This auto action is created by me. I made this. It's free to download, and if you forget how to do it, there is a little tutorial down here on the asset site. And now comes to my favorite part, which is actually just merging everything together and then painting on top and then adding so much stuff to it. I'll just put everything into a single folder so it's all nice and tidy, make a duplicate, and merge that in. And now with this, I would just actually just go in and do a bunch of cleanup, tidying up. Okay, now this is the fun part. Add a new layer, adding more hair, adding more accessories or little details, stuff like that. And this is super fun to do. And I use this brush that has an edge on it, so I don't actually have to go in, draw a line art, and then color it separately. I can just stroke and it comes with the lines. In order to make this brush, you actually have to grab a regular round brush, which is the G pen, make a duplicate, and what we're gonna do is turn on the watercolor edge. So go into the settings and watercolor edge. You turn on all three of these. So now that's in your tool property panel. So now if we hit plus, you can see that there's three options. Let's stick it on. There's an adjustment for the edge size, the opacity, and the darkness. The edge size is, well, obviously the edge size. Here it is at 3, and here it is at 12. Opacity is for the line's opacity, darkness is for its darkness. Usually I would have the opacity up full and adjust the darkness depending on the color. Now remember the flat brush we made when doing the hair in the sketch process? Yeah, I need to turn that on too when actually adding more hair strands. Go to settings again, go to brush tip, thickness, and angle. Now let's close that, the thickness to be more thin, and twist it a little bit. Now let's compare with the original hair. The lines need to be thinner and darker. So let me add a strand here. Now it doesn't look very natural. I would have to just erase the tips, so it looks like it's sort of connected with the rest of the hair. Back to the edge brush, I'm gonna reset the thickness to 100. That resets it to completely round, and maybe give her a few more accessories, like maybe a ring. Now this is done, I'm just gonna merge the layers and do some more fixing up. And one last final thing is to add highlights. Make a new layer, clip it, and set to color dodge. Now pick a sort of mid to dark color for this, because if you pick something bright, it's just gonna turn out to be white. Pick a dark color, and I use this for highlights. So just add to the edge and adjust the color, add to hair, and any parts that are shiny. Just added a few more flowers and sparkles. Now the final thing is to color correct. If you right click on the layers, go to correction layer, you'll have all of these options to adjust your colors. All of these are useful, but I'm just going to show you the one that I use the most, which is tone curve. So what you can do with this is to adjust each part that is dark or bright to shift its color around. So let's first go to the red channel. This anchor right here represents the darkness, and up here is the brightness. If I select right here near the darkness and pushed it up, any dark parts will now appear more red. Let's say if I drag on the top down, that means anything that is bright will decrease in red. So you can see that the bright parts turned blue. I usually just add 3 dots and just shift them up and down and see what color it gives. So in the dark parts, Mostly they're blue, so I prefer them blue. I'll keep them more blue by pulling it down. The midtones, I'll just leave it in the middle. And the bright parts, I'll have it to be more red. If you want to delete an anchor, just click and drag off screen. Now go back to your RGB. This can adjust the brightness and darkness of your colors. If you want the dark parts to be more dark, pull this down. If you want it to be more bright, pull it up. And hit OK. Now you can see before and after. It's a very slight shift of color. Lastly, very important, I'm just going to add in my signature just so people know that I'm the artist for this. I have a material of my own that I made into a signature, so I can just drag and drop onto it. If you want to make your own, just write out your name, go to Edit, Register Material, Image, and then select a folder. I made a new folder with my name so it's easier to find. Add a tag so it's also easier to find, and then hit OK, and then it should appear right there, and you can just drag and drop onto your canvas. Now the art is complete. This is pretty much how my art process goes. I'm gonna do a few more touch-ups on this off camera and we'll see what I come up with. It's complete! I cropped it up closer a bit, added a grid in the background, and did a few more color adjustments, just slapping color on and painting over, and so much liquefying. So much liquefying. This is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks to Clip Studio for sponsoring this video. I hope you found it helpful, useful. If you'd like to learn my process in more detail or learn other stuff like how I draw, how I come up with ideas, I have a class 101 which also uses Clip Studio Paint when drawing. The website is subscription based, so just pay a monthly fee and you can immediately just watch all of my videos. They're not live, so you can watch at your own pace. You can also leave comments, ask for feedback, and I will 100% respond to your comment and guide you through learning art. That's it. Follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram. If you don't want to search it up, you can just type down samigen.com in the search bar and that website will have all of my links to everything. Yeah, that's it. Bye!